Chris Wallace with WG Financial Group has been helping families here in the Huntsville area plan for a successful retirement. Chris strives to understand all of your financial needs to help guide you on the path to your retirement goals, creating income in retirement, maximizing your savings, and minimizing taxes. Chris has the strategies you need to help you sustain a successful retirement. Welcome to the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
Only about 25% of Americans say they have a written financial plan. That means most of us don't have a specific financial plan. So how can you get a plan in place? Chris Wallace of WG Financial Group walks us through his process for helping you create that comprehensive plan for your retirement. Chris, great to see you again.
Great to see you, Luann.
Okay, so like I said, only 25% of Americans say they have a written plan. The rest of us don't have a specific financial plan for retirement. And I bet a lot of people who are watching right now don't even really know what we're talking about when we say, that written financial plan. So what I want you to do is explain your process for us and what it means to have a retirement plan.
Yeah, as you're doing the opening here, I'm just sitting here thinking that's a lot of people that don't have a written financial plan. And if you really sit there and think about it, that's kind of scary. If you're out in a place you didn't really know, kind of where you were at, maybe you were traveling, you would absolutely have a map, right? I mean, if you're traveling, I'm sure you've been in places before you didn't really know where you're at. So you pull out the map, and nowadays we just do it on the cell phone.
Yeah.
Several years ago was the Rand McNally app. We had that stuff down in the side of the seat there, and we'd pull it out.
Highlighted in yellow.
Highlighted the path we're going to take. And so thinking about that now that so many people don't have a plan, that's a little bit alarming, but let's kind of go through what we consider to be a financial plan. We use something called the RITE retirement process. So as you know, that's RITE, retirement income, investments, taxes, and estate planning. So when we're looking at the income plan, we want to first identify kind of the shortfall of how much income we have relative to expenses. And you do that by identifying the sources of income and what's going to go out the door in terms of expenses. And identifying that shortfall will kind of help you identify how much income that you're going to need in retirement. Today, for those that are still working, the job is functioning as that income. That's functioning as the sole source of income. It's your comfort level. We call it the faucet of income. And once that gets turned off, that's a little bit scary for a lot of people. And then once the income plan is kind of designed and identified, then we kind of move into the investment plan. So we're going to still need growth in retirement. We need our investments to work. That is kind of the engine of our retirement. And if we do our income plan properly, I think in a lot of ways you can create an investment plan to have more of a long-term outlook. But in that investment plan, we're going to look at risk, volatility, fees that someone's paying, and just make sure that it's going to service their retirement plan from a growth standpoint throughout their retirement. And then you kind of move into taxes. Taxes are important. I think a lot of people overlook taxes because, essentially while you're working, taxes are just automatically pulled out of your paycheck, so you really don't even think about it. And being tax efficient in retirement, I look at it as a way to efficiently squeeze out more of your money into your pocket instead of the IRS. Now, we always want to pay, what we legally owe and all of that. But at the end of the day, we do want to be very efficient with our taxes. And then we're going to look at estate planning. Now, as you know, I'm not an estate attorney, but we're going to ask those tough questions about estate planning and make sure that families are doing the right thing there. We're going to refer out to the appropriate professionals when we feel the need to do so. And then we're going to talk today, I'm sure, about healthcare, long-term care planning. That goes into it as well, and that's something that should not be overlooked.
Okay, so what I want to do right now then is go through each of those parts of your process one at a time. So let's start with the income plan. What does that entail?
Yeah, so the income plan is going to be, for most people, it's going to involve Social Security. Now, there's going to be a few federal employees out there, CSRS, that may not have Social Security, but by and large, the vast majority of the U.S. population is going to have Social Security. Now, Social Security was designed to replace about 40% of your income. Now, most families today are using it for a much larger portion of their income. So that'll be one part of it. We're going to take a look at a claiming strategy. For a lot of families, we need to sit down and understand when is the best time for a husband and wife to actually claim Social Security. That's really important. It's important because Social Security, as you know, you've done a lot of shows with me, radio and TV, where we know that Social Security is taxed more efficiently. So it's important that we make the right decision there. Age gap between spouses, that can have an impact on when we claim, but at the end of the day, we want to sit down and we want to look at a strategy to claim Social Security effectively and efficiently. And then we want to take a look at pensions, all right? So not a lot of people anymore, very few people have pensions, but if you're military, federal government, if you're an employee that's been with a company 25, 30 years, there's a chance you may have a pension. So understanding what our options are there, if you are in the state of Alabama and you have a pension, it's important to know that if you're taking that pension, there's not going to be any state tax due on it. So no Alabama tax on it. You will be taxed federally. So understanding, should I take a lump sum? Should I take the payment? All of that really matters. And I think it's important to sit down with a professional to really identify that. And then some people may have annuities. And, we say the A word and people kind of cringe up about annuities. But in a sense, a similar, vehicle would be a pension. A pension is kind of like an annuity. It's going to provide income for the rest of your life. And if you chose the joint option, it's going to provide for your spouse as well. So reviewing all of those and really identifying how much guaranteed income you're going to have coming into the house, that's a part of the income plan review. And there are studies, Luann, that have been done that show the more guaranteed income that you have, the more stable the plan is. And what do I mean by that? You're not having to pull as heavy out of the investments. So think of it like when you're working right now. So if you're watching the show right now and you're working, you don't have to touch your investments. Why? You have the faucet of income coming in from your job right now. So you have a much longer term outlook. And I think you can kind of do the same thing in retirement if it's structured properly.
Right, and that's why we're here. That's what this show is all about. Every show that we do is talking about how people can have a successful retirement. So the income plan, so important. You have to have it, and it has to be structured correctly. Once that plan is established, then what comes next?
Yeah, once you've established the income, then you can kind of shift the focus to your investment plan. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have enough guaranteed income coming in, you don't need your investments right now, so that you can develop a longer term outlook. So let's just take an example. Let's say that we have a husband and wife, and they have $6,000 a month in monthly living expenses, but they have $7,000 a month coming in Social Security and pensions. Well, they have a $1,000 surplus at this point, right? So they really don't need their investments. So from a risk capacity standpoint, they can assume a little bit more risk because they have a longer term outlook with their investments, because they will not need those investments for many years to come because their income exceeds what their expenses are. I think what you have to do when you're in retirement is take a look at that. And if you're under and you're going to have to be pulling from your investments, you're going to introduce something called sequence of returns. So you have to take a little bit more care in the way that your investments are structured. I think you also have to take a look at the volatility. And I think you also have to take a look at the fee structure that's within the investments. All of that's really important to developing that investment plan. And I've seen situations where families have come into the office and they misunderstand how they're invested. Like, I will ask the question, so do you feel like you're more conservative, moderate, aggressive, just some basic questions to kind of get a feel for things as I go through my process. And the family inevitably will tell me, because they're in retirement or nearing retirement, oh, we're conservative, but yet their portfolio analysis comes back very aggressive. And that can be a product of the way they were invested over the last 10 years. The markets have done really well with the exception of 2022. And their portfolio might have been out of balance. And because it was out of balance, it made them a little bit more aggressive. They didn't know it. They didn't realize it till they came in to see us, thank goodness. And then we were able to kind of restructure those investment plans to really meet their needs.
Right. Okay. So great information here. We're kind of reviewing what we need to be doing for retirement. And we still have a lot more to come. The reality is that most of us don't have that financial plan for retirement. Kind of sounds intimidating, but Chris is making it simple for us today. And he's breaking down what that process looks like. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Just when you may want to forget your age, Uncle Sam says not so fast. Knowing your age is more important than ever when it comes to taking your required minimum distributions, or RMDs. Legislation just changed the age requirement, and not accounting for that could impact your retirement plan. It could be key to not overpaying on taxes in retirement. So remember, when it comes to RMDs, age is more than just a number. Before your next birthday, call today to secure a strategy for the RMD age change and your retirement. There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement.
You're watching the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
Thanks for joining us today. Creating a comprehensive retirement income plan can sound complicated and confusing, but Chris Wallace of WG Financial Group is making it simple for us, and he's walking through his process. So Chris, I want you to talk to us about tax strategies and how you help people with taxes in retirement.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to make it really clear, I'm not a CPA and I don't give tax advice, but I think as a financial advisor, you need to understand the tax code and you need to understand the different qualifications of buckets of money that someone's bringing to your office to talk about. And I think at our office, one of the things that we do is reviewing the strategy in which you're going to pull money out. And I think that's really, really important. I think a lot of people are actually intimidated by the word taxes, or they assume they're going to pay what's known as the marginal rate. So for example, I've seen people come in and they've had their spreadsheets out. We work with a lot of engineers in Huntsville, and they're very famous for bringing in their spreadsheets, and they'll do a simple calculation of their income times, say, 0.24 for the 24% marginal rate, and that's actually incorrect. And so one of the things that we do is talk about that and have those discussions and really try to help a family or an individual understand what their tax liability is going to be. But I think it's important to take into consideration, as we've mentioned many times on the show, how Social Security is taxed. We know that it's taxed more efficiently, and we know, if you've been watching my show and listening to my radio show long enough, you know that if you just have Social Security income coming in and that's it, no other income, you're in a zero bracket at that point. It's when you start stacking the other pieces of income onto the return that actually determines how much of Social Security is going to be taxed, and then ultimately how much you're going to be taxed. So I think that's important to take that into account. I also think as you're reviewing taxes, that you ought to look at charitable giving opportunities. I know that a lot of our clients enjoy giving to charities and their churches and things of that nature. And I think that's important to help a client or a family understand their opportunity, where can they give, and what's really the most tax efficient ways to give. I think there's tax efficient ways to give prior to the required minimum distribution age and then after that as well. And I think that's something else that we do a really good job at looking at the office.
Right, there's so much involved with taxes that you've got to have some strategies and be talking to the right people like you to get some advice on the tax strategies and tax planning.
It is, and I think just to add a little bit more to that, I think if you go into an office and the advisor says, "Oh, I can't give you tax advice," and just kind of drops it at that, I mean, I get that, because again, I'm not a CPA and I'm not legally allowed to give tax advice. But you should be able to walk a client through a scenario, and then you should be able to refer them out to a CPA or a tax accountant and say, "Hey, listen, this is what we've come up with. Can you kind of bless this, if you will?" And I think that's important. I think your advisor needs to understand how to talk around a tax strategy to help you out.
And so you work with other tax professionals.
Oh, absolutely, we do. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right, okay. Another thing that we can't overlook, of course, you mentioned it earlier, healthcare costs in retirement. They're going to be expensive, and we do have to prepare for that. So tell us how you work with your clients.
Yeah, it is. It's something that has to be built into the plan. Obviously, we all know that as we age, our bodies just tend to wear out a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're building in healthcare. I know Fidelity's done studies where a 65-year-old couple is going to, incur probably more than $300,000 of healthcare expenses, and that's pretty scary. So having that built into the plan, inflating it at a much, much higher rate than normal inflation, I think is really, really important. But having it in there is just, that's the start of it. It's got to be in there. And then do we need to add dental? What about vision? There's other things too that, you might want to think about or consider adding. And then really most importantly, when you turn, we've talked about this a lot on the shows before, but 63 to 64, you're going to get bombarded, like literally overwhelmed with mail on different types of insurance plans for you as you enter the Medicare 65 age, when you have to sign up for Medicare. That it becomes overwhelming, and we take a lot of that off the plate of the individual or family as they come into the office, because we actually do that at the office. And we can walk a family through what's best for them. So that's the healthcare side. But then we have long-term care. And that's a whole nother animal.
Right.
That's a whole nother expense over and above the $300,000 number I kind of talked about earlier. That can be, upwards of $80,000 a year for a private room here in Huntsville. So it can be very, very expensive. So there needs to be a plan in place. And the problem with it nowadays, it's expensive.
Right.
It's harder to qualify, for nowadays. And so that in and of itself scares people away from buying coverage. We have homeowners insurance, we have auto insurance, and we have that just in case we were to have something happen to our house or maybe even the car. Most people are reluctant to buy long-term care because it's pricey. And I would go as far as saying that if homeowners insurance and auto insurance wasn't required by law, there's a lot of people that would probably go without it, right?
Sure.
They
Yes.
would. And so I think you have to look at long-term care, and you have to understand that about 70% of the people watching this show today are going to need some form of long-term care. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to end up in a private room at a facility, but 70% of us are going to need help at some point in our lives.
So my dad, he took out nursing home insurance. I've told you that before. And I remember at the time, you're like, wow, I don't know if he's going to really need it. But I mean, he ended up using it. But that could be like something he should have probably talked to someone about, You don't really know that you're going to end up in a nursing home, like you said. So.
We don't. And a lot of times there are products available today that are more advantageous to a family than what, most would consider standard long-term care. There's different types of policies out there today, and where you can take them out, and if you don't use them, then the benefit passes on to the family. So there's different options. And so it's not like there's only one option, just buy this standard traditional care, and if I, pay on it for 25 years and I don't use it, then I lose it. There are other options out there, and we do discuss those in the office as options to the families that we meet with.
Right. So make sure you discuss healthcare, long-term care with Chris and his team at WG Financial Group. So for people who want to leave a legacy, to their loved ones, I want you to talk about how the whole legacy plan fits into your process.
Yeah, so that's, putting the wrapper around everything. Once you've done your income planning, you've done your investment planning, you've looked at your tax planning, you definitely want to think about, okay, of the assets that I have accumulated, whatever I don't spend, that's going to pass on. But before I get into that, I do want to mention that, again, I'm not an estate attorney, but we do highly recommend, you'd be surprised how many families come into the office with outdated legal documents, or they don't have legal documents at all. So that's the basics of what someone should get done, is make sure you've got your basic legal documents in place. Of course, you do that with an estate planning attorney. But then once you have that done, it's the advisor's job to kind of look at the legacy aspect and the assets that you have, how they're going to transfer at your passing, and is that what you want? Are you going to assume more tax liability today so that your kids don't have to, and after you're gone? That's all a decision for the family to make. But it's our job to kind of walk a family through that and help them understand, what their options are today. And then if they don't care, well, then the kids get what they get, and they don't pitch a fit. That's what we used to tell. That's what we used to tell my kids when they were young.
They don't pitch a fit.
Yeah, you get what you get, and you don't pitch a fit. So
I love
anyway,
it.
there's a lot of options out there. I just
Yeah.
think it's really important that a family sit down with a qualified planner to kind of talk about that, because you'd rather have those conversations, know that you've had them, know that you have the options, and if you elect not to move forward with some of those options, then at least you've had the conversation.
Right. Okay. So there you have it. A retirement review, what we need to be doing to prepare for retirement. Thank you so much, Chris. Still to come, Chris answers some of your questions. Stay with us. The Rocket City Retirement Show continues right after this.
There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today, and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
You're watching the Rocket City Retirement Show with Chris Wallace.
It's time now for your questions about retirement. So we always like to bring these questions to you, Chris. My first question is from Marilyn in Athens. And she says, my husband has been laid off after 27 years of factory work. We had a good amount of money saved in our emergency fund, so we didn't need to panic immediately. I think we're fine financially if he does retire, but I don't think it will be mentally the right choice right now. Who should we talk to?
Yeah, so I think it is time to seek, professional advice from a professional. It's 27 years is a long time to work, to work in an organization. And so first of all, I'm very sorry to hear that. I know it's tough. Many of the listeners know and viewers know that I was a former plant manager.
Right.
I worked in manufacturing for a number of years. I had to lay off a lot of families and individuals. I won't say families. I had to lay off a lot of individuals, which affected their families, right?
Sure.
So it was a difficult decision for me to have to make as the plant manager. But that's nothing like what you feel just from an emotional crunch, once you're laid off, and maybe a financial crunch as well. So in this particular case, I think it's worth talking to a financial advisor. And the reason I say that is you likely have a retirement savings plan, so you want to make sure that that's set up for your future. But I also go as far as saying that right now, for a lot of people working, myself included, my job kind of defines who I am. It's my identity. And for Marilyn's husband, it was his identity. So that's a tough thing for an individual to swallow when you've been laid off. And this is what I used to do for 27 years of my life.
Right.
And now I don't have that anymore. And so what's life going to be like? So there is this mental transition that's got to happen. So maybe if you have the right finances and your situation is in the right position, maybe he doesn't have to go back to work in that same capacity. But now maybe he can do something that he likes to do. It may be less money, but maybe it's more enjoyable. But that'll all start with the plan and kind of a diagnosis to see where you're at relative to being able to retire forever. And so maybe this is just kind of God's way of giving him a step down towards retirement. There's a lot of value in not stressing, and maybe the job, I don't know the situation, but maybe it was incredibly stressful, because I know I always tell my kids, they're like, oh, I got to go to work. And I'm like, hey, you're getting paid for it. If it was fun, you probably wouldn't be getting paid for it. There's very few people out there that get to do what they enjoy and love it and then also get paid for it. So maybe this is just a transitional period. So again, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
But I know it'll work out, and I just encourage you to talk to a financial professional for sure.
Right. Yeah, and Chris Wallace is right here for you.
Yeah, a little
You
plug
and your
there,
team,
right?
yeah. So, and we always say how, you do need to find a purpose in retirement. If you're not working anymore, find something else that you love, and that
sure.
can be your new passion,
For sure.
All right, here's another question for us. Ron in Harvest, and he says, I inherited an IRA from my father a few months ago, but I have no idea what to do with it. Where do I start?
Yeah, so Ron, 100%, you need to talk to a financial professional for sure. There are different rules today that are available today and how you can roll it over, and there's certain rules on how you have to take it once you roll it over. So the rules changed at the end of 2019. We've been through Secure Act 1.0 and Secure Act 2.0 now. So it's really important, Ron, that you do sit down with somebody so that you can identify what to do today and then build that into your strategy. Because if you roll that into an inherited IRA today, you have to take all of the money out by the end of the 10th year. So there might be a strategy where if you're still working today, you may not want to take any distributions until retirement. So again, I would encourage you to go talk to a financial professional or planner, just sit down with them and go over the options and how does that fit into your overall long-term retirement plan.
Right. Okay. So you see the number on your screen. You can call. Chris would love to help you out with that. This is another question from Jason in Decatur. This is kind of funny. Is it wrong to not want to leave an inheritance for our kids? They seem to argue all the time over everything, even as adults, and nothing ever seems fair enough. Plus, we paid for braces, college, cars, and weddings. I feel like that should be enough.
I would like to tell you that I've never heard this before, but I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it a lot.
Yeah.
And so seriously, no, I don't think it's wrong. I definitely, here's what I would say. especially if the kids are arguing now, okay? That's only going to exacerbate when a passing occurs and money is kind of, flushed into the inheritance system, if you will. So number one, the number one thing I would recommend is sit down with an estate attorney, make sure you've got the proper legal documents in place so that when you do pass and the money does go out into that inheritance amongst the, grown kids at this point, that it's kind of defined where it's going to go, and then you don't have as much arguing. And, this sounds kind of morbid to say, but you can kind of manage that from the grave a little bit.
I agree.
Which, honestly, with some of the things that I have seen, and I don't see it often, but I have seen it. I would be lying if I say, oh, I never see it. Kids don't fight. Brothers, sisters don't fight. No. I've seen it. It's not a great situation. So I think it's important, for families that are concerned with that, especially now, to go ahead and just lay out a clear pathway for those assets to be distributed. Now, on this side of death, while you're still living,
yes.
Hey, listen, go have fun. In our planning philosophy and our company, we're all about going out and playing. Now, where that came from is I was doing a call with my clients just to kind of do a quarterly update like we do. And, we have a tendency to be on our phones a lot. I know that my kids I'm on mine a lot. You probably are as well.
Yeah,
We're
I try
on our
not
phones.
to be, but I've got it near me all the time.
It's hard, right? So
Yeah.
when you're retired, when you start thinking about the economy, who's in office as president, you're like trying to read the latest updates. Now we had a pandemic a few years ago, and it's like, okay, I'm going to Google and find out all the things that I can be doing. We're on our phones all the time. So we were on this call, and I told our clients, I said, you know how mom used to tell you when you were at home and you were in the kitchen, she's trying to make dinner, and she'll tell you, go outside and play, and don't you come back until I call you home for dinner.
Yes.
So that's what I said to our clients. Like, you guys need to go out and play. Well, we've actually taken that and we've kind of rolled that into WG Financial Group Plan, Retire, Play. So what I would tell Ron and his wife is to go out and play. If you don't want to leave assets to your kids, you don't care because you've done all this stuff prior to passing, fantastic. Then build a plan that will allow you to go out and play and enjoy this last phase of life together with your wife. And then that way you guys can kind of call it right off into the sunset. The kids get what they get. And like I said earlier, don't pitch a fit.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Plan, retire, play. Don't forget to play.
Right, it's important.
Yeah.
It's important.
It really is.
You talked about purpose earlier. You kind of mentioned having purpose in retirement.
Yeah.
I think it's important that if you have the ability to do those types of things, you can't take it with you. And we've often said you don't want to be the richest person in the graveyard.
Nope, we do
right?
not. Yeah.
Go out and play. Have fun. Go play.
Right. Chris, as always, thank you so much for your wisdom. Love it. If you have a question, submit it, and we might just answer it on a future show. And if you want to know how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, maintain your lifestyle in retirement, reach out now to start planning your ideal retirement. For Chris and the team at WG Financial Group, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. Have a great day. See you next time.
This program was sponsored by WG Financial Group, where your retirement matters.